Welcome and thank you for joining us today. This session is presented by John Bond of Riverwinds Consulting, who gave us a great presentation about author promotion last week on Friday afternoon. Today's topic is Book Publishing 101, the steps from idea to finished product.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time and attending today's session. As I said last week, this is, I think, the 5th year in a row that I've been attending or speaking at TAA, and it's one of my favorite events for the entire year. Real quick, Kevin said that my name is John Bond. I'm a publishing consultant. I worked for about 25 years in academic publishing. During that time, oversaw the publishing of 500 books, 20,000 journal articles. I'm an author myself. For the last 6 years, I've been a publishing consultant, and I love connecting with people on creating and delivering great content. I've got a YouTube channel. I hope you can check that out. I'm a bit distracted today because this is a momentous day in my life. Wait till I tell you the news I had today. My first grandchild was born today. So the newest addition to the Bond academic publishing family just came out 30 minutes ago. 88 pounds, 20 ounces, title and subtitle yet to be determined. So no name yet. That's how new the baby is. So welcome to the world, to baby Bond. So it's a girl, and congratulations to her. Now we'll get to the business at hand here. And you're just seeing my slides, right, Kevin?
Yes, correct.
So what we're talking about today is how do we turn this into this? And one of my favorite quotations is, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." So we're going to talk about those steps today. Here are my assumptions about the presentation, about what we're discussing. That we're talking about 1 or 2 authors writing a book, or maybe an editor soliciting chapters for the entire project. It'll be edited for continuity. There'll be reviewers by the authors and then reviewers by the publisher. Publisher will do some editing and page makeup. Final product will be a print book, eBook, some EPUB, maybe some EPUB format. It'll be available from the publisher, also from Amazon, and it's going to be a monograph book or textbook, or you may choose to do self-publishing. But that's really what I'm focusing on here. I'm going to go through the steps very quickly. Do not worry about taking notes. I'm going to talk that in a minute. And at the end, I'm going to give you the most frequently asked questions about basic book publishing I get from everybody. I get them, not from everybody. But save yours, and if I don't hit yours, we're going to talk about it at the end. So strap in and let's go through the process step by step. Everything you see on the screen is going to be available to you in a PDF coming to you from Maureen or from somebody at TAA. So please, as one of my favorite authors, Ram Dass, says, be here now and just listen, absorb the ideas, and don't worry about trying to scribble down all the notes of everything you're going to see in front of you. All starts with an idea or a desire to express yourself. It's usually 1 or 2 people, and they see an unmet need or a market opportunity, and they have a desire to share. So we're going to break it down by steps. So I suggest when you have this desire to do this, you come up with very early on a 1-sentence description of the book, 12 words or less, something like that. And then expand that into a 3 or 4 paragraph summary of the book. From there, I'd create a working table of contents, and this can all change down the road. And then I'd come up with concrete descriptions of who your customers are. Let's say something like undergraduate engineering students. So something that's specific. I'd create a working title and subtitle, and I'd find 3 in-print competitive books. And yes, there are competitors to every book. Think about whether you'll go it alone or have a co-author, and think about your comfort level with marketing and promotion. And then when do you realistically expect to have a final edited reviewed manuscript available? and then add 4 months to that number. Now let all that information sit and percolate for a week. Then come back to it and see if you see any changes that you want to make. Don't become stuck or wedded to any one aspect of your idea. Please be open to change. Don't get stuck on a cover image or a title. Be prepared for your project to change, and it could grow or contract, and both would be very positive. Now you're going to get feedback on the idea. I would take the title, the description, the paragraph description, the 3-paragraph description, the table of contents, competitive books, customer descriptions, and so on, and I would share them with a very small group of trusted people that you know are colleagues and know the areas. Books at the end of the day are commercial entities. They must fulfill a market need. Ideally, you'll find a few friends, colleagues, or customers that you feel comfortable with and suggest a live discussion after they've seen your ideas. Be open to their combined feedback and then readjust as you see fit. This is not too early on, and I can tell you most of these people, 99.9% of the people, are not going to steal your idea. So this is for you to get early feedback of whether you're on the right track. Now comes the step of considering finding a publisher. You now have the map of where you want to go. So in some areas of nonfiction, which I assume we're mostly here about, you could actually find a publisher with a proposal and maybe a sample chapter or two without having written the book. Some people would prefer to write the entire manuscript, but let me assure you that some people can do it just off of a proposal and a couple sample chapters. The way you would find a publisher is create an industry standard book proposal and a query letter / email. Essentially what you're doing is you're laying out the plan for the publisher and giving them an opportunity to see your vision. Have this read thoroughly by friends and colleagues before you send it out to publishers. Spend way too much time doing this. The publishers will have an internal review, something like peer review, and they'll go through and think about it for the market. Let's assume that they like the idea and they agree to publish it. Congratulations. You're going to get all the details ironed out, like tentative title, description, due date, market size, manuscript size, royalty rate, etc. You'll get a draft contract, read it, and understand it completely. You're all extremely smart people and can read these documents. Seek qualified outside opinions if you think that's appropriate for you. Now you're ready to sign the contract and get started. Another route is to find an agent who might find a publisher for you. I'm not going to talk completely about that today because it is less common in this area, and you can always email directly if you think you're interested in the mass market or trade area. Now it's time to write and edit the manuscript. What I usually suggest is you take the table of contents and make an extended annotated table of contents out of it. Go and make a complete in-depth outline of each chapter. And now it's time to dive in and sit down and write each chapter. I usually talk to authors about trying to write the entire book before you go back and edit and refine each chapter. At this point, you may want to add in figures, images, and tables, which are extremely important to the book. And many times will be a decision by purchasers whether they want to move forward with the book. You'll finish up on your references and make sure you're following your target style. And now it's time to edit. This may sound rough to do, but I would suggest you read the entire book out loud. This will help you catch those simple things in the editing process that will be easy for others to spot while they're reading. When it comes down to length, one of my favorite sayings is, almost nobody has ever said, I wish this book was longer. So brevity is the soul of wit, and I suggest you try to shoot for brevity. Make sure your manuscript follows publisher's guidelines or format. And when you're complete, you're going to seek out colleagues, maybe the same or maybe different ones, to read it before you hand it into the publisher. Listen to them carefully and consider making any changes for the betterment of the manuscript. Now, if you're simply an editor, I shouldn't have said simply, if you're an editor for the book versus author, at this point, you would have gone out and solicited chapters from each person. You would have beat the bushes, had them submit their material, and then you start to go through the processes of editing and everything I just mentioned. Time for an intermission. While this is all going on, you have to start thinking about marketing and promotion. You cannot leave marketing and promotion until after the manuscript is completely written and completely turned into the publisher. We talked on Friday, and my presentation is it online for you to see, but we talked about an author promotional platform, which is essentially your ability to market, promote, and sell books because of who you are and who you can reach. Some efforts may require time to develop, such as social media or a personal website, which is why you have to start ahead of time. Have these efforts run in parallel to your content development efforts. And your publisher, after the contract is signed, may send you something called a marketing questionnaire. It's about you and your book, and they will ask for things that are in your author promotional platform, such as speaking engagements or social media accounts or connections you might make. They'll write the core copy for your book, and you're going to want to look at that very closely. Intermission number 2. Let's say you're thinking about self-publishing. If you're considering this, I still suggest you do a book proposal, competitive research, and write and get contributors and get reviewers. Treat it as if your book was being published elsewhere. It's a very valuable exercise that will help you with the marketing down the road. Be prepared if you're doing self-publishing to double up on marketing and promotion. It will all be on you. Or you want to consider a self-publishing partner like Ingram Spark or Kindle Direct, Smashwords, or others. So they many times will help you with some of the nuts and bolts of some of the things you have to do, so you're not always inventing the wheel. We could talk about these offline if you want to know more about this. I would also at this point start to dive into getting more educated about self-publishing. And there's lots of books, websites, webinars out there. But most of all, talk to people who have successfully self-published as opposed to who have self-published. So now we're back at our process. The manuscript is written. You've had your colleagues give you feedback on it. You've made changes. You're following the format of your manuscript guidelines. Now it's time to submit it. The publisher will inventory what you've sent them. They'll query you about any missing items, and inevitably there will be. They'll find peer reviewers for your work. After the review, they may ask you for changes or some revisions, and don't be put off by this. It happens to almost everybody. All revisions from the publisher should really strongly be considered, and it's going to make it a better work. After these changes are done, the publisher will consider the work accepted, and the ball is in their court. Now the publisher will dive into editing. They'll assign a project editor, maybe in-house, they may be freelance, or they may be offshore. They'll go through and line edit the work, likely in track changing format for you to see. They are likely just looking for grammar, spelling, punctuation, style, and consistency. They are likely not looking at the content or rewriting your work unless you have that specific arrangement with your publisher or it's a developmental or content editor. You should clarify that relationship ahead of time. They'll send you back a Word document with track changes for you to see and approve. And then they'll send you a laundry list or query list of tiny or larger questions for you to consider. Take a deep breath. These are natural developments that'll make the book better. Focus and spend the time necessary to accept the changes through track changing and thoroughly answer all their questions. Do it in an open and positive way, and don't be defensive about it. Don't overthink what they're suggesting, and answer all their questions, of course, from the query list. Now we're on to typesetting. And whether you call it typesetting or page makeup or turning it into a book, the publisher will take their edited work, which you've now approved, and now they'll put their graphic design people to work. This is true whether it's a paper book or an ebook or both. They will take the text and images and tables and bring them all together in one attractive package done by professionals. When done, the publisher will send you electronic page or galley proofs for you to review. Go through them very, very, very carefully. Look for missing figures or tables, missing text. Check on the relative positions on the items to their call out. Check on the aesthetics and the readability of it. Give the publisher back your changes and comments, and ask to see a new set of proofs if there are any. Parallel to this, or prior to this process, the publisher will have started on, and they may have started quite some time ago, on a cover design. Do not underestimate the importance of the title and the cover to the success of the book. If the publisher asks for suggestions or feedback, feel free to share your vision. I suggest you not become too dug in on any one idea for the cover or for the images or for the title. They have creative people at work that know their market and understand how to do this. And most of the time, they'll have better insight onto trends and designs. So please be open-minded. Back to our intermission. Now we're going to take a break for marketing and promotion again. So you've been through the steps of peer review, editing, typesetting. Your marketing and promotion efforts need to ramp up. The day the book launches, you should be prepared for your marketing efforts to roll out, whether that be social media, emails to your contacts, articles or guest blogs that you're writing, speaking engagements, and more. Coordinate all of these with the publisher. Make sure you're sending your readers or customers to the right website and more. Start before the book even launches to get that book buzz going. Do not be shy. You are the expert and you've put thousands of hours into this. And this is your baby. You want to see it do well and go to college and graduate and get a great job. One more intermission, self-publishing. If this is the route you're going down, you should be in full swing. You should have perhaps a self-publishing partner or be piecemealing the work such as editing and typesetting out to your various people. Whatever cover design you come up with, I beg of you to get feedback from people outside your circle. Get honest feedback and don't fall in love with one idea. Also, I still believe that you'll need to have the manuscript peer reviewed, even if you are self-publishing. And the marketing and promotion needs to be in high gear. Have a full-fledged marketing plan that you've written out with exact details and timelines. Now we're on to the final touches. The book is reviewed, edited, and typeset. You have a great title and a great cover. The publisher added the index. They sent it to the printer and uploaded it to various ebook platforms. You see it as in stock as Amazon and other retailers. A UPS box arrives at your door. Your advanced copies are there. Congratulations, you did it. But you're going to want to keep it going. The day after the book arrives does not mean the project is in the past. Promotion is key. If a book is published and nobody reads it or nobody buys it, does the book exist? It's like that tree in the forest. And of course, the most important thing, as many of the experienced writers know on this, is to get started on project number 2. So that is a whirlwind process of what I think is book publishing 101 from beginning to end. But most important, I've come up with, in no order and no rhyme or reason, 3 screens. I think it's 3 screens. Yep, 4 screens of the most frequently asked questions that I've received over some very broad and some very nitty-gritty things. Maybe yours are on here. I'm going to go through, give a couple sentence answers for each one. If yours are on here, great. Or if you need more, you can always ask it in the chat feature, or you can email and talk to me offline. So I'm going to tell you right off the bat, most of the answers to a lot of these questions is going to be depends. So is it easier to write it alone or with a co-author? Well, depends. And a lot of that has to do with the origination of the material. Do you have a preset co-author that you work well with? Where are you with the idea of control and getting it all done yourself, or having somebody share the burden and the load? one of the most frequently asked questions I get all the time is, how much does it cost to self-publish a book? What I say to the person is, how much does it cost to go on vacation? Are you going for a day, or are you going for 3 weeks? Are you going to Tahiti, or are you going to Baltimore? Are you going to stay in a friend's house, or are you going to stay at the Ritz? Are you going to drive, or are you going to fly? There are so many variables in book publishing. Is it going to be paper, or is it going to be e or both? Is it going to be, for the paper book, is it going to be in color or black and white? Hardcover, softcover? Are you going to edit it, or will you hire an editor? And on and on and on. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question. I will say most people have said in the past they ended up spending more on self-publishing than they realized. And I think that's a good thing. You do not want to underestimate and therefore skimp on things, specifically on the physical book or on the marketing and promotion of it. So yes, I could come up with some numbers and say, a few hundred or a few $1,000s for what the cost of self-publishing might be, but it's going to be very misrepresentative. And I don't want to lead anybody as down the road as to how cheap or how expensive it is. I'd rather talk to you directly over your individual circumstance than to say it cost $7,500, because it always depends. Next one, should I write the whole book first, or should I go through the proposal process? Part of this has to do with how, where you are in your field. Are you at the pinnacle of your field, or are you a brand new person? Is your idea a novel one that there is nothing out there like that, at least in your mind? Or are you trying to build a better mousetrap for a textbook that's out there already? So from my point of view, if you can write a proposal, Kevin, I just want to make sure you're not talking to me, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of moving my mouth around as I'm trying to organize the questions. That's
No,
all.
no,
I'm sorry. No, I'm not
no,
trying to talk to
no problem. Sorry about that.
you.
So part of what I think is, if you can write the proposal with a couple sample chapters, why not do that to see if there's a market interest, as opposed to writing the whole manuscript? I do know several people would rather write the entire manuscript to firm up the idea and to see if they can do it. Can I negotiate my contract? Well, first of all, the answer is, of course, you can try. Really, what it comes down to is your position and what you have on your side to negotiate. Really, negotiation, as we all know, sometimes is being able to walk away from a project or a company or a publisher, and your comfort level with that. So it never hurts to ask, if you want to ask for escalated royalties or additional copies or more marketing or, an advance, feel free to do that. It really just comes down to whether you'd be able to walk away if they said no, no, no to everything. So I've got some, there are some stellar people that are guests on this panel, guest on this workshop. I'd love to hear from them if they have other ideas. Another one, why do I have to do the marketing? And so this is your baby. You want to see them survive and grow up. And I said, go off to college and go off and get a job. You're the expert in the field. And as I said, it's just as much as on you as on the publisher. I know some people feel like they are shilling or hawking stuff, but you are the best one to have that dialogue with your colleagues or the customers, because you are the expert. A lot of people say, I just want an ebook. It's all about digital for the future. Do physical books ever matter anymore? And yes, they do matter. In the pandemic year, physical book sales were up. Well, ebook sales were up in some areas as well, but physical books still matter. What I start to think about is the thing when people used to say, do you want paper or plastic? This is just two ways to offer a customer a book. Do they want it as an ebook, or do they want it as a paper book? So why not offer that to them? And if you don't want to have copies sitting in your garage, well, first of all, you don't have to do that. You can do print on demand, and there's lots of other ways around that. How much do I have to edit the manuscript? I'm not that good with grammar. So I think if you're, as most people are here, highly educated individuals in their field, have a sophisticated grammar check program on their computer, are going to show it to their colleagues who might point things out and read the book out loud, I think that's going to be sufficient for the publisher who are going to edit the work anyway. I don't agree with the book reviewers. How do I let them know they were wrong? So if you're going to go back and tell the publisher, about your responses to the book reviewers' comments. I would do it in a non-defensive fashion, and I do it with citing things that support your argument, as opposed to nobody thinks this way anymore. That's old-fashioned thinking. I don't agree with this. Same thing. I don't agree with the manuscript peer reviewers. How do I let them know they're wrong? Same thing. Go back, do it in a positive fashion, give them facts, give them supporting documents, and tell them why you think it should be slightly different. I still get this, but some relative of mine is in art school and came up with a cool idea for a cover. Can I ask the publisher to use it? I would suggest you don't. I'm sure you have a very talented nephew, or you've got a very great photo that means a lot. You can share it as a possibility, as inspiration, or to point the publisher in the right direction. But I would try not to be very firm with art that's not created by high-level professionals or people specifically involved with book cover design. The cover means so much. Halfway there for frequently asked questions. What do I do about competitive books so there are none? Mine book is one of a kind. And I tell everybody there are competitive books for every single book that's out there. Even if the competition is, I'm not going to buy any book, there is competition. And most books have been built upon other books, and just look for in-print ones. But I would be very open-minded. There are very few books that are not standing on the shoulders of others. How can I predict the number of words or pages for my manuscript should have? What I usually advise people, look at books on your shelf, come up with books that you think you're shooting for. Do a quick word count on a couple sample pages and do some math. Come up with another number of photos and tables, and just start to dive a little bit into the predicting aspect of math. There are some formulas if you Google this online. Sometimes they're so they have such a wide range. So they go from 70,000 to 125,000 words or things like that, that they're almost not helpful anymore. But I suggest you just find a book you like and do some quick math off of a few sample pages. I want to use copyrighted material from a third party and the publisher wants me to pay for it. Is that common? Well, the question really comes down to it depends. Are you picking 25 tables from the 25 most famous book in your field, and they're going to charge you $2,500 each? Yes, the publisher is going to make you pay because you're not creating original material. But if it's one or two things that you're being asked for, and maybe some of them are from common usage, I would suggest that you may be able to negotiate a small number with a publisher for them to pay at the very beginning. But once the contract's signed, they're probably less likely. They probably will ask you to pay. How do I find a list of publishers to submit my proposal to? Lots of investigative research. As much as I'm not a fan of Amazon, Amazon does a great job of showing books using keywords, or if you scroll down the bottom, the various categories that books are in, and just start to click through and look for only in-print books, And you'll start to find ones that are publishers that are publishing in that field. Click through to their site, see if they're still publishing in that area, or whether they've been purchased, or whether they maybe exited the area. Start to look at bibliographies of what you've been doing your research on. And then the other thing, ask colleagues in the office next door, see if anybody has an experience with other publishers. Almost done here. I don't like the way they edited my manuscript. What can I do? I would suggest you focus mostly on the content and worry a little bit less about the grammar part. Obviously, if they're wrong, they're wrong. And if they've done it a disservice, they've done a disservice. But most of the people are buying your book for the ideas that you're expressing. And I would not become too dug in over Oxford commas or other specifics of grammar. Last one here. My co-author or my chapter contributor is not doing what they promised. I'm not doing what I asked them to. Can I kick them off the project? So for a chapter contributor, if they've not sent anything to you, you've given them a deadline, it's passed, you can absolutely have them, kicked out of the boat and bring somebody new in. Just make sure you tell them that thanks, but no thanks. We understand your schedule's very busy. If it's the co-author and they're on the contract with you, much more of a sticky one than that. So part of it is your relationship and the conversations you've had and how much work product has been created. And so that's a much more difficult one. I would talk with somebody. I could talk to you one-on-one, but that's hopefully not a situation you're going to find yourself in. Self-publishing, I don't want to have to store books in my garage and run to the post office. What options are there? As I said, there's lots of self-publishing partners, Kindle Direct, Smashwords, Ingram, Lightning Spark. So if you want suggestions here, I can explain what these companies do and do not do for you. They are not publishers. They are order takers in most instances, but we could talk a little bit about what they do. Finally, a frustrating one. My book is not at Amazon or is hard to find or is out of stock. Can I email Amazon? If you're going through a publisher, I would try to do most of this through the publisher, although they may be equally frustrated at the lack of personal responsiveness from Amazon. But remember, Amazon is not your publisher. They're a third party. They're an enormous group that wants to sell web services and kitchen sinks and rototillers, as well as maybe your book. So it's a frustrating system, but we have to acknowledge they have an enormous market presence. So that's a whole bunch of the frequently asked questions I get, a grab bag at best. So now I'm interested to hear thoughts and questions from everybody else. I'm interested to hear from this very, very experienced group of attendees at this workshop. Let me know if you have any experience, don't agree, or have alternative thoughts. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you, Kevin or Eric rather. So
Okay.
tell me what's scrolling there.
Yeah, you had a very comprehensive list of frequently asked questions, and yet there are a bunch more. And so let's get started. One of the early questions was from Scott, who asks, should he be submitting to one or several publishers?
Yes, there's a lot of different thoughts on that. Most publishers will ask you just to submit to one at a time, and a lot of people stick by that. Other people, because they're frustrated with the amount of time a publisher takes, will submit to several. There is a chance that that's going to backfire. If you start to have dialogue with both, and you're probably not going to get in a bidding war, a la Stephen King or anything. But I would stick to the party line and say I'd submit to one at a time and have a little bit of patience, but then be willing to pull back in the academic field if you're not getting a proper response.
Okay, and Gayleen asks, what are your thoughts regarding the unsolicited emails we receive from publishers stating that they're looking for authors in our discipline? And I'm not sure if this is related or not, but later on, Roberto asked a question. He says, in international publishing, what kind of ethical relationship or code binds publisher-author dynamic? Any new thing on this aspect, and is there a way to guard against it? And what he's talking about, he says, is predatory and non-predatory categories.
Yeah, so there's something that's come out. It really started in journal publishing called open access, where the author pays a fee and their articles available to anybody with internet access without the barrier of a subscription or membership. It's basically free to be used by others as long as it's cited and under certain conditions. It is the wave of the future for journal publishing, much more so in some disciplines than in others, but it is a major accepted force. Unfortunately, with that has come predatory publishing in the journal area. And what they do is they take every manuscript that comes through and they accept 100% of them. They don't peer review them. They don't edit them. They don't do any typesetting. They use your Word version. They put it up there and they want you to pay the fee, sometimes a couple $1,000s. And you're really not getting anything out of it because the journal's not a true journal. If you really put your mind to it, most people can do a little Googling and figure out these predatory publishers. There are sites that specifically list some of the predatory publishers or how to determine them. FYI, email me and I could tell you more. In book publishing, open access is coming a lot slower than it has in journal publishing. There are open access book publishers, and it's an accepted way specifically for educational material. I think the base of the questions are, there are things called hybrid publishing, where you make a different royalty rate, you pay lots of their upfront fees, So I really tell people to start to think, what do you want? Are you looking for a publisher like Elsevier, Sage, Oxford, Wiley that are going to do full service publishing for you? You're going to make a royalty, but you're not going to have to do any of that work and you're not going to have to pay anything. Are you going to look for self-publishing or open access? Or maybe hybrid's right for you. If you're already willing to pay part of that fee, then I would start to go through and look at accepted hybrid publishers or open access publishers. Look at what they currently offer. Do you know those offers? Can they give you a reference? And really investigate their website extensively. So I understand it's frustrating. You should be in the driver's seat with your proposal and sending your proposal out, as opposed to clicking on emails that may have questionable nature for you to start until that's the route you want to go down.
Yes, something just came up in the chat is Elizabeth reminds us that we can, if we're at an academic institution, our librarians can really help us with that sort of thing, help us vet those.
Elizabeth, music to my ears. Great idea. Sorry I didn't say it. And go see those librarians.
Yeah, I agree. Shripriya asks about where to get samples of a good book proposal that they could follow.
Well, as with most things, you simply Google it. There's a bunch that are out there. You have to, separate the wheat from the chaff, because many are, here's a couple pages, now email me and I'll write them for you, which is a service I do, but I don't do that. I don't advertise that at my website. But most of the times you're going to look for a sample one online, but there are 2 or 3 great books on writing a book proposal. Email me and I'll tell you the best one that I know of. Although a lot of those books concentrate on fiction, a fair number of them have a healthy nonfiction section. So I would simply Google samples.
Okay, great. Now, Ken asked a similar question about mass market trade books, so I assume the answer is the same. But he also goes on to say that for mass market trade books, as opposed to textbooks, is it not nearly impossible to get a publisher without having an agent?
Yeah, I didn't put that down, but that's one of the top questions I get about getting an agent. So I think what it really is, there's a 2-tiered answer. If you really feel you have to be published by Random House, Penguin, Simon Schuster, Harcourt Brace, and that's really you want to go for the brass ring and go for the top publishers to get the best name and the biggest oomph, you're going to need an agent. And getting an agent is a challenge. I've gotten people agents, and a lot of people haven't gotten agents despite my effort. So there's no magic answer here about getting an agent. However, there's a fair amount of mass market trade publishing for, I'm going to say, tier 2 or tier 3 that do not require agents. And I've had people's proposal accepted through them. Once again, it has to do with the idea, the individual, and the proposal. But because they're tier 2 and tier 3 does not mean their work is tier 2 or the quality of their work is tier 2. At the end of the day, people really like to say they're published by Random House and Simon & Schuster. Let me ask you, how many people can name the publisher of The Joy of Cooking right now? How many people can name the publisher of Stephen Covey's books or Stephen King's books? At the end of the day, most people don't know who the publisher is. How many people can name the publisher of the Dummies Guides or the Idiot's Guides? So publishers are very important. And if you can land one with Random House, more power to you. But if you're going to go with the biggest ones, you're definitely going to need an agent.
Okay, that's helpful. Now, as you were going through the steps of the process, my friend Pillar, who is a professional indexer, asked this question: what about the index?
Great. There was one mention of the word index one time in there. So here's what the way the situation used to be. 20 years ago, and I was in myself this situation many times. Karen Sladek can contest to this, that the publisher would say the author pays for the index. When you write your book, if you didn't want to do the index, we could find a person who does it from a cottage industry fashion, and we charge your royalties for that. Part of that has slightly changed nowadays. There are publishers that just say it needs an index. We know it has to get done. We're building it as part of our costs, and the publisher and the author doesn't pay for it. And they may either send it offshore, or they may send it to a freelancer in the United States, or I hear there are some programs that do a nominal version of it for very small book, very specific books, which I can't contest to. But the index is going to come in at the very end after you've written it, been peer reviewed, edited, completely done, and ready to roll. The index will be the last thing inserted into the book, in my experience.
One thing I just want to kind of add there, in my experience, some indexes are really good and some of them are, yeah. And I've found that if I give some input at the front end to the indexer, that they end up being much higher quality because they're kind of more what I'm looking for, I guess. Now, Lori asks some questions about the graphics in that. She says, why are book tables, graphics, and pictures important to the publication acceptance and, important in getting it, accepted for publication? So.
Yeah, first, Kevin, great point that the more you can give guidelines or samples or books that you admire to the indexer, the better the byproduct's going to be. So great point, Kevin. Here's what I would tell you. If your book will be in any situation where people are going to flip through it, which is less common nowadays, but if it's in a bookstore or you're sending out adoption review copies, those graphics and tables become very important. Let's say I have a book on the history of economics in the 19th century in Britain, and you flip from page 1 to page 500, and there is no break in the text all the way through. It is simply 500 pages of text. That is one impression that you're going to get from readers. However, if you have tables, some of them landscape, some of them portrait, some of them very small type, some of them very large type, some of them seem like they're cut and pasted from a third source and not done well. Some of them are in color, some of them are black and white. People will have a different impression. Whereas if you get one where it's been pre-thought out as to the presentation, they're pleasing, they're aesthetically pleasing, customers and readers will make decisions about the book and about what you're saying, even though they've never read it, based simply on paging through those. So if you're not in that situation, if people will buy the book sight unseen, then you're still just want to do a yeoman's job for the readers and make sure you're presenting it in such a way that makes it valuable. I hope that's enough of a question because I don't have much more of a statistic to back that up other than the feel that it plays into the equation for people to use the book.
Okay, and we have another question that relates to images and so on, graphics, and that is, will the publisher help me find good quality images for my book, or do I need to do it myself? Do I reference every image to avoid copyright issues?
Well, there's so much in that question. I mean, are the images being redrawn? You just can't pull it off the web. What are the images illustrating? Are they just pleasing, or are they things that are going to be referred to? It's so much of a hornet's nest. I would suggest it depends on your individual circumstance. You definitely hit on something that you're going to want to coordinate with the publisher. Wherever you grab something off the web, if you're using that as a guide, always have the URL of where it came from, understands the rights usage, understand that that's low res and you likely don't have the ability to use it. There is no fair use aspect of much of what you're seeing unless you're at a site such as Wikimedia or Wikipedia. And even then there are restrictions. So I would simply say, keep track of wherever you got something from, know you can't use it because it's low res, and coordinate it with the publisher.
Okay, cool. Now we have another question here that has to do with university publishers and
University presses?
Yeah, that's what my assumption is here. And so one of the questions is, why is it that university publishers pay so little in terms of royalties? And so therefore, is it a good idea to keep publishing with them? And is it true that their books never go out of print? She has a fiction manuscript. Should she submit that to her editor or find a commercial non-university publisher? So
first, Kevin, let me just tell it. I'm going to stay as long as we need, but I'm going to put my contact information in the chat if anybody needs it, in case anybody starts to duck out, but I'll keep answering questions as long as we can. So there's lots of things here. when you're thinking about a university press, think of them just as a publisher. They're going to have to hold up and compare themselves to the publishers that you want to publish with as well. And whether they're subsidized or located at a university isn't going to really matter to the consumer. Now, if you want to support that university or they have specialized in a particular area, I admire you for going with them, but you're going to have to deliver for them, and they're going to have to deliver for you. They should now be close to paying market royalties because a lot of them cannot get away with what they've done in the past of paying slightly less. And they're being held to a greater financial accountability than university presses have ever in the past. And many times their subsidies have gone away or their backstop has gone away. Um, there certainly are university presses that publish fiction. That's usually not what they're known for. And so if you have a tight proposal, that's a fiction proposal, and you know that university press does fiction and has a niche, then I would say definitely consider sending it to them. But university presses should stand on their own, as any other publisher should. And so they shouldn't be given a pass for either their market capability or the royalty rate that they pay. That may not be popular, may not be everybody's experience, but that's, I think, representative of what's happening in 2021.
Okay, well, boy, this worked out well. That's the last question on my list, and it's the last minute of our presentation. John, thank you so much. You always give presentations that are not only interesting, but just full of useful information. So once again, thanks, John, and thank you all for attending.